Well, good morning, Mad Rock Nation, and I guess Zac Grantham's friends and family, whoever looks at your page, because I see you're posting this on your stuff too.
Oh yeah,
Millions of them,
I
frankly.
definitely make sure that I'm involved in this one.
Yeah,
There is a whole bunch of Granthams running around too, so you just
We multiply. Yeah.
as
like
excited
gremlins.
as excited as we normally are to do one of these StreamYards, I hate the fact that we have to do one like this one,
Yeah.
where we're having to pay tribute to, I mean, by all means, a guitar god. I mean, I know nothing of other way to explain or to even describe Eddie Van Halen and the stuff that he did. I mean, on the Mad Rock Morning Show this morning, I was playing the isolated guitar from Hot for Teacher.
Unreal.
That he did. I mean, and you take all the stuff, all the vocals, you take all the other stuff, and you just listen. I mean, the hair on the back of my neck is standing up as I'm playing this on the air with Tom Miller this morning. And again, I mean, we give him props when we play the songs, but here we are having to talk about him past tense, because unfortunately Eddie Van Halen passed away yesterday. A decade of dealing with throat cancer, and then the throat cancer, moved to his brain and other parts of his body. I can't even imagine what it must have been like dealing with that.
Cancer sucks.
Yeah,
Cancer sucks.
But for 10 years, that is just, I can't even imagine that. And Scott, you got the news. I'm surprised you're able to finish your show, quite honestly, because when we get news like that, I mean, it's like the world stops. I mean,
it was a visceral punch, for lack of a better term. It was like somebody punched you in the soul. It was just like, what just happened? No, this can't. This is the soundtrack for so many questionable decisions in my life. It's just such a horrible thing. But you were saying a great guitarist. The word innovator gets tossed around a lot, especially in music and with musicians. It maybe only really applies on the guitar, of the electric guitar, to two people in rock music, Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen. Really both reinvented the instrument at a level that no one else had even begun to think about. The first time I heard Eddie Van Halen play, it literally, I said yesterday, I dropped the needle on that first Van Halen record and got my head smoked. Didn't know what happened. What I just hear. And then by the time Eruption starts after that first cut, you're like, what in the hell's going on here? Mind blowing. It was, I think Eddie Van Halen, like a generation of people before us, changed people's perspective of music like the Beatles changed people's perspective of music. Those were those watershed moments throughout musical history where things happen that really change everything. There's been a handful of them. He was one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Zac, I know that you were a Van Halen fan. Now, interesting, I mean, you're a Van Halen fan, and your dad is an even bigger Van Halen fan, and he made sure that I was aware of that. I remember that one year when we were doing our toy drive that he wanted to make sure that I was aware that he was a huge fan.
I think my dad asked everyone, who do you like better, Van Halen or Van Hagar? And I'm pretty certain that he asked my wife that, like, hey, how are you? Who do you like better, David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar?
Was that a stipulation before you guys get married? She had to choose one or the other?
And of course, my wife's just like, she's just like, I don't know. And of course, my wife's favorite band is Leonard Skinner, which is it's crazy. But no, I grew up on Van Halen because that's what we listened to at the Grantham household was Van Halen. And so I was born in 1987. So I had to listen to the past Van Halen records, that came out in the late 70s and the early 80s and all that. So I have a little bit different perspective on it. But I will say, from a musician myself as an influence, even though Eddie Van Halen was a guitar player, it's like you said, Kilian, like your mind was just blown by listening to that guy. And as a drummer myself, Alex Van Halen is definitely one of my top drumming influences. But I never heard the story about Eddie actually starting to play drums before the guitar until he passed away. And I wish I would have known that several years ago. But when artists pass away, one artist I will say this is I wish I was able to see SRV in concert. But I am so glad that I saw Van Halen in Oklahoma City, like in 2006, just to be able to experience seeing Wolfgang, Alex, Eddie, and David Lee Roth ride a giant inflatable microphone across stage. So I'm so glad that I was able to see them in concert.
That David Lee Roth, he's a classy dude.
He had this bright yellow top hat on. And
he wore that same outfit to breakfast that morning too.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Now, see, Zach, you're talking about, you got into Van Halen a little bit later. I'm sort of in the same boat. You're 10 years younger than me, but I'm younger than Kilian. So Kilian's impact from Van Halen is even different than mine. So, Kilian, you've been in rock, been into it your entire life, and I know that. Like, literally. What was your first Van Halen album? I mean, which one did you?
The first one I bought or the first one I heard?
Bought, both. Yeah.
The first one I heard was the first Van Halen album. My brother's room was stocked full of 8-tracks and records, and I grabbed it off the shelf and threw it on because that cover was so cool. With the Van Halen in the middle and then the 4 pictures of all the guys on it, and it was kind of swept, the color. But like I said, you drop that thing, and the very first note of that album is just like a bomb hits. That whole just, the Running with the Devil, just that whole thing. And then the second Eddie starts playing, it changes your perspective on guitar completely. And that's what it did. But that was the first one, the first Van Halen. The first one I ever bought myself was Diver Down. And it wasn't, Diver Down was not every Van Halen fan's favorite album, but it became my favorite Van Halen album, and to this day is still my favorite Van Halen album. And there's great records in that collection. I mean, God, it's hard to choose a favorite Van Halen album. Mm-hmm. That one has a real significance to me just because it kind of was my first.
So 1984 came out when I was 7 years old. So, it was partially Sesame Street. And then when I would be out, at Sun and Fun, which was the water park and stuff, I would remember hearing, Jump and some of the music from it, but I didn't know who that was. I knew it was a rock band, but I didn't know who that was. So my first album that I remember listening to and remember buying was U812. So that was mine, because I think that came out in 86 or 88 or somewhere around there.
86 and 87, yeah.
Yeah. So, by that time, 10, 11 years old, I'm finally finding my musical roots and finding that. And so it was U812 and then 5150. And I love 5150. I remember that album cover because it had Atlas, it had the Van Halen wall with the guy, the Atlas thing, and so I remember that album cover more than anything. But then as I listened to those, and that was the Hagar days, and then finally, as I got older and was able to listen to the, 1984, I was like, hey, I dig this. This is cool. And Jump and all these, the ones that were the most popular in MTV. I'm like smack dab in that middle of the MTV generation, where that's where I was introduced to a lot of these bands and a lot of these songs because of MTV. So, yeah. And then after that, for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, I don't think that was like a hugely popular one, but I always love the song Right Now.
Yeah, great album. Yeah, some of the best songwriting is on that record.
Yeah. So those are my experiences with Van Halen.
So I had the cassette tape of the Best of Van Halen Volume 1 that came out in 1996. So I wore that thing out. But my senior year of high school, we actually, hey, y'all remember record stores? Remember those things?
Yeah.
Those records in Dallas. Spent a lot of time there.
Yeah. So my senior year, me and some buddies, we went to Nashville, and there was a record store, and I saw the 5150 actual record and Diver Down, and I purchased both of those, and I never listened to those on an actual record player, but I hung those bad boys up in my bachelor pad. I had those for several years, and so I know they're around Grantham Manor somewhere, but as you know, they're not up anymore. But it was cool to be able to actually say you purchased a Van Halen record.
Yeah. I've still somewhere around here. That Diver Down album is still around here somewhere. I can dig through something, and I'll guarantee you I can run it down in some box in this room somewhere. That's, stuff you never get rid of. That's my childhood. He literally, and you're talking about 1984, Dave. That was a moment in time for, I think, a lot of people my age too. I'm 48, about to turn 49. 1984 was a new Van Halen. It was a Van Halen that we hadn't ever heard or seen before. Keyboards, what? Jump, what? But it didn't take long to catch. And with a lot of bands, that wouldn't have been the case. A lot of bands that would have ruined them, but it didn't. It just took Van Halen fans a second to wrap their head around it. And then they were like, well, Eddie's just a genius. You know, he just does everything. So he's going to integrate this in. It's, you know, it's what happened. It's the natural progression of things. But that album had such a huge impact, I think, on my generation of Van Halen fans. I think that was a big one for the people in my age range. And just a big one in general. My God, that was a huge selling album.
Would you say that was their biggest album?
I want to say it was probably, you know, I don't know. You almost have to divide Van Halen into two eras, you know, because I think 5150 was a big moment for them with Sammy Hagar. And I think 84 was a huge thing for them with David Lee Roth. And they're both just incredible albums. And you know what? That will be our rock fight today. Let's see which one they think is better.
Yeah.
It's a very tough question.
I could never even begin to even enter a decision there because they're both such incredible records. But I'm a bigger fan, and that's a long running question too. I'm a bigger fan of the David Lee Roth era, even of Eddie's playing during the David Lee Roth era. I love what we used to call the Brown sound, which was Eddie's early tone from the first album up to about 1984, pre Sammy Hagar. He had this sound about his guitar that was just otherworldly, you know. I'll get off my soapbox.
No, I mean, that kind of feeds into that question, you know, what is your Van Halen favorite album? And you sort of already answered that, Scott, but
yeah,
you're gonna
Dive Her Down.
Yeah, Dive Her Down, definitely your favorite. And out of all mine, you know, when I put this graphic together to bring up on screen, I'm sitting here, I have no idea how I'm going to answer this because, you know, each of the albums that I listen to and when I listen to them, I have strong emotional ties to because it was all at different points of, you know, my life. You're what, 6 years older than I am. And it's hard to believe that there was so much difference in just that 6 year span, you know, or whatever. But it's like 1984 is really the Gen X kind of, I mean, that's when it's kind of in between wherever it kind of split into the older Gen X to the younger Gen X. But it's kind of a defining point there. 1984 was, even though I didn't hear that until later on, I'd have to say that's probably my favorite album. And I do. And Zach and I have had this conversation. I too prefer David Lee Roth's Van Halen to Sammy Hagar. I love Sammy Hagar's solo stuff, but I like David Lee Roth with Van Halen and just the sound and the way that they played off each other. And again, this is coming from the visuals of MTV of what I saw.
Sure. Tex Ellis, that's a great album, fair warning. That is a fantastic album, top to bottom. That was the thing about Van Halen records. It's almost like AOR radio, album-oriented radio, was designed for Van Halen.
Right.
You know, because there wasn't singles really on Van Halen records. Every single song was good. Yeah. Look at the track listing on that first Van Halen album. It's literally, we play every song off that first Van Halen record in regular rotation. Same goes for a lot of the others for, you know, Fair Warning and some of the others. It's amazing. They didn't have to release singles necessarily. We just went through and picked those records clean, and we knew that listeners were going to know the songs because listeners bought Van Halen albums. They didn't care about Van Halen singles. Yeah. They bought Van Halen records because it was a whole thing. It wasn't a song. It was the whole album. And that first record is a prime example of that.
Yeah.
There are so many songs, and you're right. We play a lot of, not all of them, but a lot of them. I mean, you did a full hour yesterday, the 5 o'clock Big Block on your show after the news hit. I did one. I think that's actually the first, and I was like, usually I leave this to Kilian to do the hour long things, but I'm like, it's Eddie Van Halen. I've got to. I mean, I couldn't resist, you know. So
if we could get away with it, we'd have done the whole day.
Yeah. In fact, there were Mad Rock listeners. Some of the Mad Rock Nation is like, he needs an entire day, and trust us,
I support that.
Get away with it. If we could keep our jobs and do that, we would make that happen. But we've got to, they gave us the permission, you know, the powers that be gave us the permission to be able to do hour long blocks. And so that's what we've done as best.
So we plan to abuse that at every turn.
We absolutely do. And we've got a lot of stuff. So I was getting requests of the stuff you weren't able to play yesterday, which was funny. There's like
a lot of it too.
Yesterday. And so I was like, okay, I'll throw some of this stuff on there, but yeah.
Bless you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing that this morning. I'm not going to steal your thing because I know that's your thing, but
hey, steal away.
I hated
an opportunity to pick the songs. I'm down.
It's just, I was like, I just felt that it was right to be able to even do that. And, because if you were to talk to radio consultants, they would say, never do stuff like this in morning. Oh, too bad. I'm doing it. So it's Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah. Hey, 30 years from now, when George Strait passes away, trust me, I'm going to be taking over the Katy Country for like 38 hours.
Right.
So,
millions of years from now, when they discover Keith Richards still living in a cave somewhere smoking Marlboros, he's going to tell them all about this.
Oh,
so what about songs? Now, Zach, I'm going to start here with you, Zach, because did we even ask you the album? Favorite song?
I'm probably going to say, okay, so I don't know if you can like both David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar equally in the Van Halen days, but I do. But I have to say my favorite album is 5150.
Yeah.
And I kept going back and forth on the song. I love Hot for Teacher just because, it starts with that kind of like that motorcycle exhaust sound with the double bass, and then it goes into the incredible guitar. I will say, though, that Top of the World is probably my favorite Van Halen song. We played it at our wedding, which was hilarious to hear at a Baptist church that I grew up in. That was great to hear that cranked up to 11. But yeah, Top of the World, that guitar intro. And that's the cool thing about Eddie Van Halen is, man, those guitar intros, he was such a great composer, just, thinking about how it would sound on an album and how it would sound on the radio. But hearing that lean, ding, 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 and just going right into the drums, and then, Sammy going, hey, what the Sammy thing that he does, it's just great. I love Top of the World. It's a good song.
That's a fantastic song. And that was a great Sammy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm working on it.
Have you been? I hear you in there sometimes doing that. I'm going to say DOA, even though I said, Diver Down's a favorite album. Diver Down's a favorite album for other reasons, not necessarily all the songs on it. They're all fun songs, but it just has a special place. But DOA is just a killer song. That guitar riff is out of control. But there's just something about the dirty kind of loose garagey sound that song has. They sound like a hungry young rock and roll band, and that's exactly what they were at the time. But to me, that really kind of defines who they were at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. Feel Your Love, was that Feel Your Love Tonight that Kathleen just said was good?
I think it was I lost it. Ain't Talking About Love, maybe.
Another great one. What about you? Did we get you, Dave?
No, this is so difficult. Like trying to choose your favorite out of your children. How do you?
Dave, we all have favorite kids. Don't lie.
Yeah, sorry. Just admit it, Dave.
Well, come on, Kilian. You only got one kid. That's unfair.
She's my favorite. Yeah, see how that works?
Yeah, I think so. Whenever Panama came to mind. Whenever I asked myself favorite song or whatever. But I've always loved Atomic Punk too. It's just, yeah, that's just one of those. So it would be between those two. It'd probably be Panama first and Atomic Punk second, I think.
I'll tell you what. I don't know if you guys know about this or not. I didn't know about this until people were telling me about it yesterday during the big block of. I was having people share their memories of Van Halen and what it means to them. My friend Jeff, one of our a great listener. Van Halen did a free concert in downtown Dallas. Because at Texas Jam, Sammy lost his voice, and he promised Dallas that he would come back and do a free show.
What year was it?
They did a free show in downtown Dallas, I guess unannounced. And according to Jeff and Amy Harris and some other people that were talking yesterday, there were people hanging from light poles and in trees and standing on top of buildings to try to see the show. But apparently it was pretty phenomenal. And I'm sure at some point, if somebody hears me talking about it, somebody who was commenting yesterday is going to comment about having seen it.
Wasn't it in the West End?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Near the Spaghetti Warehouse?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Craig Hooks, I believe, posted a picture yesterday in our big block, stream there that it's just a phenomenal picture too, standing right in front of the stage. It was really, really cool. That's the kind of band they were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not just Sammy. That's just them in general. That's who Eddie was for sure.
The major text there saying, yeah, it was a free show in the West End, was unannounced. Also, Michael here says it was there for both of those shows.
Wow, right on.
Pamela remembers that as well. Yeah. So I mean, a lot of the my phone going off over here. So yeah, I mean, a lot of memories and stuff of things going on there. So I mean,
man,
hard to believe. So, yeah. So here's the time, and I know. So here's the thing. So I know that a lot of people already posted some of their tributes to Eddie up in the previous comments, and we'll do our best to try to find which ones those are. But I would say probably right now would be the best time to now really start posting those tributes, because we can bring those up on screen as you do. And while we wait for the Mad Rock Nation to post those in the comments, the tributes, whatever you want to say about Eddie, now's the time to do that. But I went and found some of the tributes that were made by different people, celebrities, by other musicians, people that worked with him, all that stuff on social media, and just wanted to bring those up as we talk about it. So of course we got to start with David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar. Those are a couple of people that posted. So the quote from David Lee Roth there was on there. But again, Mad Rock Nation, go ahead and start posting your tributes, and we'll sprinkle your tributes in the middle of some of these that we found from some celebrities and musicians here. Sammy Hagar's.
Yeah, and did y'all see that picture too? Oh my goodness, it just breaks your heart.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of breaking a heart, this one right here, even whenever I was typing this in this morning, it brought tears to my eyes. From Valerie Bertinelli.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Just seeing the fact that she posted this on social media, and you know that she's hurt, even though they've been divorced for quite a long time now. But they were together. They had Wolfgang there, but and Wolfie. That's the moment I read that, Wolfie, and that they were there the last moments to hold him. That was just, I can't even talk about it.
Wolfgang's tribute was pretty gut wrenching too.
By the way, I'm a huge David Letterman fan, and Eddie Van Halen was on the show several times, just sitting in with Paul Schaefer and his band. But it made me chuckle this morning because, sorry, Dave, I was on YouTube a little bit this morning looking at Eddie Van Halen stuff. Right. But Valerie Bertinelli was actually on the show, and Eddie was sitting in with the band, and David Letterman brought up this magazine that rated Valerie as like the 9th sexiest woman of the year. And she was kind of embarrassed. And David was like, "Why are you so embarrassed?" And she's like, "Well, my husband's right over there." And he's like, "Oh, does he not approve of this?" It's like, "No, he's been calling me number 9 for the last several weeks." And of course, you see Eddie over there, they pan to him, and he has that big grin.
That big goofy grin.
I just thought that was great.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Number 9.
A little bit of a North Texas connection to him. Dimebag Darrell from Pantera, he worshipped Eddie. Mm-hmm. And they were really, really close. And Tex, you can chime in here too, because Tex, you told me a story yesterday that was so cool. Dimebag was buried with Eddie's original black and yellow guitar, because it was a request of Eddie's, I guess. But there was actually, and Tex, like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, Van Halen was a code between the brothers when something was going wrong. It was kind of their safe word. And it's giving me chills. According to reports, Van Halen was the last words out of Dime's mouth.
Wow.
Yeah. Tex told that story yesterday and made the hair stand up on my arms, and it makes the hair stand up on my arms to this moment. That's two legends who understood what each other were all about.
So here's Laura with a little story here about Meridian, Mississippi, there, home of PV Electronics.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Eddie had his EVH 5150 and Wolfgang lines of guitars, amps, and cabinets made there. He visited many times. Big news in the town, I'm sure. Meridian, Mississippi, that'd be a big news.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Good stories.
Dave, I may be stealing your thunder on this. Okay. Well, go ahead with the Gene Simmons thing, because that's very interesting too.
No, go ahead. Go with yours.
There's a connection there too.
Yeah, I was going to talk about I don't know if either one of y'all have like a favorite solo from Eddie Van Halen. I know the thing he did with Michael Jackson in the Beat It solo was incredible. That's a great solo. But the solo in Ice Cream Man is pretty amazing just because it has the drum hits.
Yeah.
But I heard a story about before they got their record deal with Warner that Alex was telling Eddie the whole double tapping thing that he does, that he needed to, when he was going to do that on stage, he needed to turn his back to the audience because they didn't want people knowing that just yet before they got signed. They wanted to make sure they kept that as a secret. We want it to sound cool, but turn around so they can't see what you're doing. And then when they got signed, it was like, oh, okay, well, now you can start doing it. That can be your thing.
You know, it's funny because I was reading an article yesterday before I even heard about Eddie. I was reading about Judas Priest. Their Killing Machine record was released later this week. And it's made a statement in the story about how one of the guitar players had adopted Eddie Van Halen's single finger tapping technique for that record for the first time. One of the first guitarists outside of Eddie Van Halen to do it. So yeah, that was an immediate thing that people started kind of taking over. You know, speaking of Gene Simmons was instrumental in discovering Van Halen.
Yeah.
In fact, he kind of wanted Alex and Eddie to play in Kiss was kind of his thing, but that realizing how good those four people were together, that was never going to happen. And can you imagine that, Eddie and Kiss?
Now, Gene,
what would Eddie's character be?
Yeah.
Isn't that part of the story too? Gene helped them do a demo before they got signed.
Yeah, he absolutely did. Yeah, it's interesting how they're all tied together. Mm-hmm. You know, they were practically, they may have even been the house band at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Hollywood. There it is. He'd say Van Halen instead of cool or awesome.
Yeah. Wow.
That's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's really heavy.
So Pamela has some experience with displays and stuff for Warner Brothers. Had to take down the 1984 material, brought home the huge poster and a couple of flats to hang on the wall of the house.
That's awesome.
I remember doing that at the college radio station. They would send a bunch of posters and stuff. And I mean, that was like, that's how you got your posters and stuff for your, for your walls, was to do stuff like, or working in a record store.
It's amazing how times have changed. They caught hell for that album cover just because of the Angel Baby Smoking. It was, you'd have thought the whole world was coming to an end. But as you see, it went well. Now,
here's one. You never know if a kid's going to watch this, so I had to edit what this said here. But from Nikki Six, just talking about, rest in peace, Eddie Van Halen. The Mozart of rock guitar. And I've seen that posted like multiple times. In fact, you'll see that on some of these tributes from different folks of him being compared to Mozart of the guitar.
Mad
Lenny
genius.
Kravitz. Now this is a classic line here from Lenny Kravitz, though.
Yeah.
Looking at it from perspective I hadn't looked at, or even thought about, Heaven's Gonna Be Electric Tonight. Can you imagine him and Hendrix up there jamming together? That would be.
Oh my God. The litany of people. My God.
That would be incredible. Here's another one here. Now, here's a guy who's also dealt with cancer.
Yep.
Kilian, you want to read that one?
Yeah, he fought a long and hard battle with his cancer. Right to the very end, Eddie was one of a very special kind of person, a really great friend, and they were really, really tight. And that, again, that word innovator gets thrown around a lot. There's a couple of them that you could use that word to describe, but maybe only those few, a very select handful, but those two, Tony and Eddie, definitely. And like I said, they're really close friends too. So there's a lot of people in the industry that are hurting right now because he was such a nice guy and he was people's friends. I talked to a friend of mine yesterday who's a photographer, a rock photographer, does, the tours, very minimal work going on right now, of course, but has photographed them on tour many, 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 many times and has incredible stories about how wonderful he is and how gracious he is and warm and welcoming and just a sweet, sweet guy, the whole time she's known him. That's all I've ever heard about him, was that he was just a sweet, sweet guy. Even when he was drinking, you didn't hear so much about Eddie Van Halen being a giant pain. I'm sure Valerie would tell you different, but he wasn't out getting arrested or whatever, and he always had that smile on his face, always. And you'll never see anyone who looks like they're enjoying playing the guitar like Eddie Van Halen did.
Yeah.
That man enjoyed that. And that was an extension of his arm. And you could tell he was only comfortable when it was happening.
Mm-hmm. He was pretty athletic too, to be jumping up and down and playing a guitar like that. My goodness.
Yeah, he was always ripped. You notice that? Always in perfect physical health.
Hey, did y'all, there was something, I don't know if you have this as a tribute, Dave, but I found something on the internet, or I read something on the internet earlier today. Did y'all ever hear the story about him kind of changing up the song Beat It just a little bit for his solo? Yes. I don't know if y'all, but I heard it was something along those lines. So and I don't know the full story. So if y'all know the story, please share it. But there was something on Twitter that I read from Brad Sundberg on the Michael Jackson, Eddie Van Halen Beat It thing, to where he basically came into the studio for 30 to 45 minutes total, donating his time and talent, just happy to be a part of the project with Michael Jackson. And he says a day or two later, Bruce was mixing Beat It in Studio A, and Michael wanted to hear it loud, like really loud, what they called like Michael loud. And the Westlake HR1 speakers were pounding so hard that one of the woofers actually overheated and caught fire. So he says over time the story grew a bit, but really it is true. Eddie's guitar solo and Beat It actually caught the speaker on fire.
Now, I was going to do this later, but since you already started bringing that up, here was Quincy Jones' tribute to him, which I thought was amazing here. So I love this part of the story, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but when Quincy Jones reached out to Eddie Van Halen, he didn't believe it was Quincy Jones. So it took more than one phone call for him to finally figure out that yes, it was in fact Quincy Jones. He did want him to collaborate with Michael Jackson.
Yeah, he kept hanging up on him.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, and I'm sure that celebrities and musicians and people deal with that kind of stuff all the time, of people acting like whatever. But it's just the fact that out of all the stuff that Quincy Jones could have talked about, that he remembered the fact that he didn't think it was actually him on the phone. That is just, it's such a great story. And you got it.
I think that solo was either first or second take too. I think it was just a 1-through thing that he just did, because that's also just what he did. It just came out of him like nobody else. It came out of him.
He played piano by ear. You had piano lessons. He never actually learned how to do it. I was playing some of the audio this morning about that, and he was going to be a drummer, but then his brother stole the drums bass, and he was like, "Fine, I'll play your damn guitar." That's just literally what he said.
And boy, did he!
Wow. I mean, could you imagine?
And didn't just play them; he built them.
Yeah.
And that was, I don't know if you've ever seen those videos or seen some of the pictures. Eddie had a workshop in his house. Those guitars were, like I said, an extension of his arm. He built a lot of the stuff that went on them. He would hold it up like a steel guitar in front of him and lay it flat in front of him by attaching a piece of wood to the back of it and putting a hinge on it. And then he'd set it on his belt buckle so that he could lay it flat and tap on it like a piano.
That's crazy. Because
he's brilliant. But he built those, the red and white striped guitar. You look at that thing, it's torn apart. It's gutted. It was, I believe the first one was a Stratocaster that he yanked the pick guard off of and all the pickups out of and put one pickup in it and one volume knob and filled in the wood on it and then just started painting it. But he always did that. And those guitars were iconic, and you could not get his sound because of it. Yeah. You could buy the amp. You could buy a Fender, you could buy a Charvel, you could buy whatever, but you weren't going to nail that sound because it was in his fingers and it was in the guitar.
And he made playing the guitar look so easy too. Like it was just kind of stupid. It's like, all right, come on, dude. Like at least put some work into it. Like he's just sitting there and it's just almost like he's bored sometimes, with a smile on his face.
It's big smile on his face, and he almost puts more into smoking his cigarette while he's playing the guitar than he does while he's playing the guitar. But again, that kind of loose, he was always having more fun than anybody else in the room at a show. When you saw Van Halen, Eddie was having more fun even than you were. You couldn't possibly match the good time he was having all these years later still.
Yeah.
He's like a Bruce Lee of the guitar. I mean, because here I'm going to go nerd on you, but like, yeah, it's like the mirror neurons in our brains when we see somebody else do something. It's like you see Eddie Van Halen play the guitar, and you're like, well, I could do this. I can just copy what he's doing. If he can do it, I can do it. And then you try, and you're like, something's wrong with me. Nothing. It's like I'm having a stroke of this stuff, and then you realize, oh, nobody else can do stuff like that as much as we want to. Brian May here, he made his comment. This wonderful man, way too young to be taken. What a talent, what a legacy. Probably the most original and dazzling rock guitarist in history.
Well put. Well put. You know, he and Brian May started to do a project together. All they really managed to get was some demos done. Somebody posted a thing on Instagram yesterday saying that his mom met Eddie in a bar. They were there recording, and his mom and dad met Eddie in the bar and got to talking to him. And he's such a nice guy that he agreed to meet them next week to have drinks again. And she had told him how big of a fan her son was. Eddie showed back up the next week with a cassette tape and told her, give this to your son. It's raw mixes from the board of a project I'm doing with Brian May from Queen that never saw the light of day. So this guy's still got this cassette tape that was given to him by Eddie, 35 years ago, of just stuff they were noodling around with, just a jam session with Brian May.
Yeah.
It's just sitting around jamming with, Eddie Van Halen and the guy from Queen.
Yeah.
But that tape's worth so much money now, and it's the only one in existence as far as we know.
So do you think they were kind of the first ones, Van Halen, to kind of mess with the writer a little bit? The whole Brown M&M story?
That is.
They did that just to make sure people read the writer.
Yeah.
It was for the whole point. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I actually use that, with my outside stuff. Whenever I teach people negotiation, this is one of the stories I use of how to negotiate like a rock star. It had nothing to do with wanting brown M&Ms, as you said. It had everything to do to make sure that the promoter read every single line in the contract and rider to make sure that the safety equipment and safety precautions that they had put in there, because at the time they were using this gigantic light, probably the biggest light set that had ever been used for concerts. And there was a big fear of it falling and killing somebody or whatever. And so if they went into the green room and there was any other colored M&Ms other than the brown M&Ms, they would know that to go and check and make sure, or just to walk out and not do the show because they didn't pay attention to the details.
Have y'all seen the writer, the actual writer? Because
yeah,
kind of sharing these things, and it's just like they have under the section munchies, and they kind of tipped everybody off too. They were kind of hinting around about it. Hey, these are pretty important to us. Potato chips with assorted dips, nuts, pretzels, M&Ms, and then they put warning, absolutely no brown ones in all caps. So I know that was the thing that was between management and the band, but they put it out there like warning, no brown ones, like, hey, you should probably pay attention to this part here.
Pay attention to this part. Yep.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, and Zach and Scott can both attest to this, I use that same method in my emails. I'll put something randomly in the email to see if people are actually reading the email.
He does. He baits us.
Read it, so.
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
he does. Well, it's funny because most promoters and booking agents, people like that I know now, refer to it as the brown M&M clause.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people, they don't even call it the writer anymore. It's just that's what it's become. They became synonymous with it, and that was as much them as it was just brilliant management too.
Do you have any stories from this one? This was Metallica's tribute. Considered him an inspiration and idol after spending that summer together on the road in '88. A friend.
I watched some of those videos yesterday, and I watched just some of the pictures that James Hetfield was putting up on Instagram yesterday were really good. Some really, really intimate stuff. That was yesterday. Instagram was literally a treasure trove of memories from artists. Some people with some really, really heavy stuff, and people you wouldn't expect. But I didn't. There were younger artists, like new artists, that were just as passionate about it as guys like me and other people. He stretched across so many boundaries. There was no really, Van Halen didn't really have a genre. They weren't a metal band. They weren't a hard rock band. They were Van Halen.
Yeah.
They'd always been Van Halen, and they can't be Van Halen without Eddie. It's over. That's it. It's done. You can't be Van Halen without Eddie Van Halen. No, you cannot put somebody else in there who sounds like him.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Yeah. And it's crazy to me. Like, you just look at the iTunes chart, like after something like this happens, when you have somebody like pass away, like, Eddie Van Halen, but the iTunes chart, of course, number 1 this week is Fleetwood Mac and Dreams because of that viral video thing that's going on. But then you have Jump, Panama, You Really Got Me, Eruption, Running with the Devil. So Van Halen has 5 of the 10 spots after the passing of EVH.
I hope the next 2 generations, I hope the millennials really listen to Van Halen. I hope my kids' generation, the Gen Zs, I hope they pick up on and realize just how awesome Van Halen was. I hate that this happens to cause that, but I just hope that they realize what we've lost.
Yeah, I think that there's a new generation of guitar players. The guitar has found a whole new audience and found a whole new group of people who fall in love with it. I have an 18-year-old niece who's a phenomenal guitar player. Never thought I'd see that, So I think there's no way for them to not be influenced by him, because he influenced so much of just how the instrument is played and even how the instrument sounds. It just, everything about the electric guitar, Eddie had an impact on its current state. And any guitar player that tells you he wasn't influenced by Eddie Van Halen, country, rock, punk, pop, bluegrass, polka, he's lying. Don't trust that person, and don't trust anybody who's a guitar player that doesn't like Eddie Van Halen. Just put that out there now. Just don't trust them.
Yeah.
Well, Kilian, I think that Laura Miller and Major Tex, they're basically helping you with your show prep today. They posted some links for us to be able to use from some things. Our friends at Lake Texoma Dental Care and Wellness had a story they shared with us.
Wow.
Yeah. That's on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. With the Jacksons at Cowboy Stadium in Irving to play a solo and Beat It. Van Halen was performing at Reunion Arena that night, made a fast trip to Irving to perform the encore with Michael and his brothers. To my knowledge, that was the only performance live with the Jacksons. Very thankful to have been there. Daniel Akers there from Lake Texoma.
Daniel Akers, there's times I want to climb inside your head and mill around a little bit in the stuff that's gone on in there, because, man, you got some great stories, dude.
Yeah. He's been to any concert, you always see Daniel there. It never matters. Taking pictures, enjoying the music, just fantastic stories.
He is I love talking to Daniel. He is literally just a treasure trove of information. You just pick that brain.
Yeah. So on the level, though, I mean, you're our go-to guy for the music information. Would you say he's at your same level, or is he?
I would go to Daniel to find things out.
Would you? Wow.
Oh, that's impressive. Oh my God. Yeah. I'll consult him. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a couple people in this, Daniel, our mutual friend, Metal Rob, I will consult. There is a lot of people. This Mad Rock Nation, man, I'm not in comparison. I just sit back and let them run this thing, man. They've forgotten more than I know.
Now, I don't know who runs the official Motorhead Twitter. I don't know if it's one of the guys or some of their crew or whatever that does that, but here was their tribute to him. Maestro, a maverick, a legend in every sense. Our modern day Mozart has left the planet. There's another reference to Mozart. Yep.
The mad genius, Mozart did things his own way. He recreated music in essence, how it was written, how it was constructed, how it was arranged, and how it just in general, he recreated it. And that's exactly what Eddie did. Oh, you're the best, Daniel.
Yeah, right. Alice Cooper, he didn't have a whole lot he could say. That's all he could. That's all he could muster from that.
Yeah, that was.
I mean, you got to think for this entire group of guys and ladies who were part of all that. The 80s, the 70s, the 80s, and all that stuff. They're seeing their cohorts, their colleagues, all passing away, and so I mean, just for their own mortality, it's probably shocking and distressing for them to see this stuff.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure there's some guys that woke up this morning and went, "Wow, this is fleeting." Better, well, hopefully it'll help some folks try to live better. We are the product of that era. A lot of us, we are rode hard and put away wet, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. That is absolutely
didn't necessarily take the best care of ourselves, and I think there's a lot of us that pay for it physically to this day.
Honestly.
You know, yeah.
Too much drinking in college, too much other stuff, lots of rock and roll. Yeah, it's kind of
late nights, early mornings with the interchangeable late night, early morning scenario. You know,
hanging out at the bar more than going to class. So much so that they just gave me a job at the front door because he's already.
Because they thought you worked there because you were there so much.
It was like, you're already here always anyway. Can you just check people's IDs at the door? I'm not going to class. Are you kidding?
Oh, you know, that's
great.
That's a career in the making. Oh, yeah. Ozzy.
Let's see who else we got. Yeah, Ozzy here. His influence on music and especially the guitar has been immeasurable. It's an absolute legend. Eddie, I'll see you on the other side, my friend.
Oh, that's a good reference.
Now, we've done a lot of, and I purposely picked out, a lot of the classic rock artists that we play. But even over on the other side of the hallway here at Mad Rock and Katy Country, especially, a lot of the country artists have been influenced by Eddie Van Halen, as you said, Kilian. I mean, any guitar player or whatever that says he hasn't been or she hasn't been influenced is lying.
If you can listen to Brad Paisley and not hear Eddie Van Halen, then there's something wrong because there's a huge influence there.
Yeah, go listen to that Play album from Brad Paisley and tell me he didn't love Eddie Van Halen.
Yep, you can hear it in everything he does. Yeah, you can see I studied him.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Zach, this is your genre, so you can read the quotes from these guys.
Okay. BP says, I loved everything about the fire and style he brought to the guitar. I studied him. Heck, everybody did. We all wanted to play just like him, but no one did it quite like him. I mean, yeah, you do have a lot of folks now that try to do the double tapping thing. And yeah, it sounds really good, but it's not Eddie Van Halen good.
No, it's not it's that something about his fingers. There was magic in his hands. Yeah, there absolutely was. First.
Whoa, James.
Such a great album. I'm telling you, that album is just one after the other. The other.
Zach, another one of your country artists there, Kenny Chesney.
Oh yeah, I saw this morning. Kenny Chesney, he was a friend and a hero to anyone who has ever picked up a guitar and had a dream. Rest in peace to the best guitar player that ever lived. Your music will live forever. Yeah, for sure.
And then finally,
cool that these guys, that everybody recognizes it. You can't not recognize it. My dad thought I was out of my mind in the 80s, and he loved Van Halen. He hated everything else. Every other sound he heard emanate from my room was product of the devil. But Van Halen, that guy's okay. That guy can play the hell out of the guitar is what he told me. He's all right with me.
Yeah. Sturgill Simpson said, my first concert, face melted, mind blown, life changed. Impact is an understatement. The man single-handedly altered the course of music.
Well put.
Yeah, sure is.
Yeah, so that's all of them. That was a bunch. I mean, we made it through a bunch of the different ones and a lot of from the Mad Rock Nation as well. But I mean,
even LL Cool J posted a tribute about Eddie Van Halen. I mean, he touched a lot of different people when it comes to the scope of music and all the genre and and like I alluded to earlier, just being a composer on, and just the well thought out things that he was doing with Van Halen. Yeah.
I think that's something that's overlooked a lot, but he was a great composer. His dad was a great composer.
Yeah.
They were a classical music family. His dad was a composer. His mom was an opera singer, I believe. Mm-hmm. They were very, very musical, and it was. You don't learn what Eddie did. It's not something that you learn in guitar lessons. It's not something that you pick up watching videos on YouTube. It's something that's in your DNA. You're born with that, like Hendrix. They're just, like I said, that guitar was an extension of him. Yeah. And it's a very rare thing. It's a very rare gift. And he personified that gift better than anyone ever.
I can't help but wonder if it was because he didn't have that professional or formal training. And because of that, no one said, you can't do that.
Yeah.
There was nobody saying you're not supposed to do that. You can't do that. That's not the way nobody was there to say that. He just did it on his own, learned on his own, and came up with techniques that then other people wanted to imitate. I mean, I think that was a huge part of the fact that he did what he was able to do is because nobody was there telling him he couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's that when there are no rules, you basically make your own, and he made his own. There's other incredible guitar players who have a foundation in things. Yngwie Malmsteen has a very strong foundation in classical guitar. Randy Rhoads had a very strong foundation in classical guitar. Eddie had a really strong foundation in classical music in general, but the guitar was a tool. It was what was put in his hands, and he literally just turned it into something otherworldly. It was he literally changed the face of it completely, as Hendrix had before him. Yes, it was, Lori.
Karen talking saw Van Halen with David Lee in Dallas early 80s, saw them in Calgary, Alberta, Canada with Sammy in the 90s. Very cool.
I saw him with Sammy and with David Lee Roth, and I got to say that I cannot tell you which was better. I really can't. It's they're both they both have their merits because Eddie was in both of them.
And I feel like that Eddie is kind of overshadowed with his vocal ability too, with the harmonies and stuff. Because when you think about the harmonies and the background singing for Van Halen, you think of Michael Anthony just because he's phenomenal and just has that natural ability to lock on and be able to do the harmonies. But Eddie was right up there too to be able to create that chord, that harmony chord.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Yep. You're right. They did stay true to their, that was one thing too. They are one of those bands, and that's a good point, Mark. They were one of those bands. You can identify Van Halen within seconds. And it's because of, again, the style, but between the drums and the guitar, you will recognize a Van Halen song instantly. And if anybody pilfers either one of those tones, it's noticeable. You can't make a record using the Van Halen drum sound. You can't make a record using Eddie's Brown sound. People will notice, and you will get called out. But they had a very unique, and Eddie had a very unique sound. But together, they were a very unique machine. Something completely original. Yeah,
that's very true. Something we've kind of been over it, but that's very true. He loved classical music. He named his son Wolfgang.
So when I saw them in Oklahoma City. Of course, when Eddie did his guitar solo, they zoomed in on the big Jumbotron, and he has the cigarette at the top of his guitar. And of course, he's playing and doing his thing. And then he kind of look up and he smile, and just everybody would just start screaming because, it was that Eddie Van Halen smile. But, Wolfgang played bass on that tour. And I'm telling you right now, guys, that was kind of like the elephant in the room because you got David Lee Roth, you got Alex behind the drums, you got Eddie out there, and of course you got Wolfgang playing the bass. And the way they had the stage set up, all of a sudden you see Wolfie, you see him start to walk up on top of this big old thing that they had set up above Alex, and he raises that bass guitar and starts playing I guess is it an E note for Running with the Devil?
Yeah, that single note.
That is awesome. That you would let him go up at the top and feature him like that. I mean, he picked that bass guitar and turned it up and was like, oh, and just everybody went nuts because they were like, where is he going? Why is he going all the way up there?
Man, how proud would Eddie have to have been?
Oh yeah.
My God.
And even for Alex, you could just kind of tell Alex would just look over and see him and just be like, this is cool that we're playing with him,
Yeah, that's incredible. It really is incredible. Yeah, Amy had some great stories yesterday too. They always do, man. They never disappoint. That's why I say the Mad Rock Nation has seen some over the years, and I love hearing their stories. That's another reason we do this is because their stories are so good.
Yeah, Tom Miller this morning was talking about the fact that one of his biggest regrets is never being able to see Van Halen.
Really?
Because he's a huge rock fan. You wouldn't think that looking at Tom Miller at KXII, but he loves the music over here on Mad Rock and listens all the time. But he was telling me this morning before we went on the air of how much he regrets not being able to see Van Halen live.
It was a unique experience. It really was. They were mesmerizing to watch. And one of the single best live bands I have ever seen in my life, bar none. Maybe the tightest live band I've ever seen.
So, we're talking about the smile that Eddie had, and I'm sorry to keep talking about the Oklahoma City show, but it was just phenomenal. It was like one of the best concerts I've ever seen. But they did Ice Cream Man, and David Lee Roth was playing the acoustic. And, as a musician, he started it way too fast. And it was funny because you look over at Alex, and he's like trying to get him to get with the tempo, and you can kind of see like the almost panic, like, dude, you are not, this is way too fast, you're about to kill me on the drums here, because this is a pretty up tempo drum number. And of course Eddie's looking around and he's just smiling, like he doesn't care. Yeah. He's like, hey, I'm still going to play it the same way, even if it's about 50 beats per measure faster, Oh my gosh, it was hilarious. And, just as a drummer myself, knowing that it's like, oh my gosh, Alex right now is probably like, this song is about an ice cream man. He's going to pass out playing the drums on it. But it was just great. Eddie was just steadfast the entire time, just with that big old grin on his face.
There was always something mischievous about that grin, which is why.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Like we're
very
about to
fly
up here.
Yeah. You're about to experience something awesome. That was kind of what it spoke to me. It's like, whatever I'm doing is awesome.
It was almost, it's that same look your friends give you when they're about to say, hey, hold my beer.
Yes.
It's that same look. It's that, hey, watch this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about Eddie for about an hour, and I'm sure we could probably go on for another 2 or 3 hours, as could the Mad Rock Nation. But we just wanted to take some time and come on here and talk about the stories, talk about the band, talk about the man, and just pay our tribute as best as we could, along with y'all's help. So
I think this is like the first musician for me that has passed away to where I actually was just like, because you hear these older musicians and them passing away, and you're like, oh man, that stinks. Well, this one, when I saw the news, like, it shocked me. I was just like, whoa, because it's like a band that I grew up on, because I'm not old enough yet to have bands that I really like now that, they start, you start hearing stories like this. And immediately I texted my dad, and of course he was shocked, because immediately when I think of Van Halen, I think of my dad.
Yeah.
So I imagine, in 75 years when my dad finally passes away, we'll probably be playing Van Halen at his funeral, because that's my dad, and telling a lot of dad jokes too, and asking folks whether they like David Lee Roth or Sammy better.
And separating them on each side of the room by who they choose.
Here's the DLR folks, and here's the Sammy folks. I'm sitting in the middle.
Yeah, here I am in the middle.
Yeah.
I could totally see your dad wanting that too. Yeah.
I can too. Yeah. I can totally see that happening.
And what's funny is, I can't remember who I replied. It was somebody on Twitter. Who was it? Maybe Shelly. Is it Shelly Martin's husband?
Aubrey, yeah.
Yeah, I replied to him on Twitter, the Happy Trails from Diver Down on there. So yeah, that's kind of what I think of at this moment is Happy Trails until we meet again with Mr. EVH.
Yeah, if it wasn't for copyright, I would have played it too, because I did play it on the air. I was able to play it this morning on the show, but here on Facebook and YouTube we can't do that. We get blocked copyright stuff. So I guess all we can do is, which is kind of ironic when you're talking about somebody that played the guitar so well, but I guess we need to just give some moments of silence here for Eddie Van Halen. You guys have a good day. Tune in to Kilian this afternoon. I'm sure he'll do a lot more about Eddie on his show this afternoon.
I will.